So we've been exploring chain of command support choices. One of the great things about chain of command is that World War II, it follows the narrative of when you enter into the game, your initial forces, the platoons, the sections, the units, they're locked in place. You kind of know what you're going to get with the army lists. But then what's really intriguing, based on the scenario and based on your support choices, modified slightly by what time period we're talking about. Obviously, if it's early war, I'm not going to have the availability of Tiger tanks on the table. Late war, they're going to be everywhere, or, well, they're going to be more common on there. But being able to look at the support choices and select them radically changes the tactics of your core army. So it's really intriguing. I find it really intriguing because you have this core kind of representation of World War II for each of the various armies and nations, but the diversity of what you select opens up so much. A very simplistic, tight rule set with options and layers of options. So a while back we were looking at snipers, we've looked at tanks. Let's look at the mortar team. Now, admittedly, I like big guns. I like to play. It's funny. It's a kind of smaller platoon-sized game. I'd say maybe slightly above skirmish is the initial chain of command rule set. But you can pump it up with tanks and some pretty interesting support choices. I like Fritz likes those tanks, and I like those points. I like those bigger games. As soon as you go down to maybe 3 support choices or 4, now you're only going to get maybe one extra thing on the table. And the mortar team, from the German perspective, buys in at 3 points. So what should we explore with that tactically? What does it bring to the table? First thing is the damage dice. It's not really doing a lot of damage. I'm going to roll 2 dice, and like other things in chain of command, first I have to hit you, then I have to deal with the possibility of cover, whether it's increased or decreased based on the support choice, and then we have to see if I cause any shock and if I cause any kills. And ultimately, if I do cause a kill, is it against a junior leader or possibly a senior leader in there? There's a lot of what ifs to make something happen. And the more dice you can throw at something, the greater the chance of the what if. On the opposite extreme, a Tiger tank laying down high explosive rounds is going to generate a lot of dice. I've got one of my infantry squads, 2 MG42s in there, opening up 8 dice each. That alone, before we even add in the rifleman, that's 16 dice on there, right? It's a lot of dice, so a lot of chances to hit 4 or higher based on range. A lot of chances to roll 5s for shock or 4 depending on cover, but I'm looking for those 6s. I'm looking on laying down 3, 4, 5, 6 kills per turn, per shot. Best case scenario, of course, you roll fistfuls of dice and you hit nothing and you don't get any shock, you don't get any kills, and you're like, what the heck's going on? But the mortar team, first thing I look at it, and when I played it, right away I'm like, I don't know, where's the secret sauce on it? It's got 2 dice. Well, the challenge here and the advantage here is based on deployment and the way the mortar team works. Yes, it can fire direct, but if you're firing direct, something's kind of gone wrong. And direct fire means the team itself can draw a line of sight and visual direction to the target on there. Many things in chain of command, the range, if they can see you, you can see them. You can see them, they can see you. And being small, consisting of small number of models for the mortar team, I really don't want to fire direct. As soon as I go to indirect, what that means is I have line of sight. Another unit has line of sight and is yelling back, radioing back, hand signal back, communicating back somehow, if you fill in the narrative, to that mortar team. This allows the mortar team to shoot and yet remain hidden. This is the value of it. It's a way to protect your support choice and isolate it. Have something to activate potentially every turn. lay down a little bit of something on there and not have to worry about it getting taken out and forcing you to take a chain of command test or use a chain of command die to prevent the loss on there. It's a little bit of an extra bump with how it works. And it works well in tandem if you're moving forward with your infantry squads. There's always going to be multiple lines of sight that they can draw to that target and report back to your mortar team on there. The teams themselves work really, really well in places where they're isolated from penetration. And what I mean by that is heavy forest, where they're 6 inches in or 4 inches in, depending on the forest. That means they will be able to shoot out, but right away, what can shoot in on there? Placement, what I like to do with placement is naturally your jump-off points, you're going to try to protect, and you're going to try to have good spacing in there so you have a lot of options based on where you're going to jump off, but you can easily protect all three of them. What I like to do with the mortar team is on one of the far jump-off points. So imagine I have 3 points, center, left, and right, more or less, modified by mission and terrain, of course. One of the jump-off points, the extreme left or extreme right, I will move off and then spend a turn or two, especially early on. I want to get that support choice on early on. Move them away from the jump-off point. Move them to a place of total isolation on the table. So this way, ideally hidden in woods, hidden where my opponent will have to send something in to penetrate the cover to be able to shoot. What this means is you want to break off and go after my mortar team, then that's going to take whatever you're sending against it out of the battle elsewhere. That's going to remove it out of the battle. And at the same time, if you want to go for the jump-off points or commit otherwise and just ignore that mortar team, now that's 2 dice every single turn. 2 dice every single turn. 2 dice every single turn on there. So it's an interesting kind of choice to further segment out your opponent's forces on there. I consider it more of a kind of what-if tactical, here you're going, and how it operates on the table, as opposed to a damage dealer on there. I will say, in terms of activation, once you begin to bring on some of the bigger support choices that have a junior officer in there, and you start activating them on the junior officer, meaning like a tank with a junior officer, I would rather use that activation versus the heavy activation. If I'm playing with the rule set where I can activate with the senior officer, well, that's even better. That frees up all those times that you roll a 1 once it's on the table to activate that and shoot. So I find if you actually have a lot of support choices, the mortar team gets activated a lot more than you think. From the German perspective, personally, I'd rather get a sniper team if I could, but it's a different in 1 point. Otherwise, on the first support choice list on there, I would say for most of the German army lists, one would be better off with another senior officer. That's the only choice that I feel like if you are so low on support point choices, I want to say like 80 or 90% of the time, I feel like you're better off taking that second senior officer, second senior commander, to have both of them on the tabletop, issuing 3 orders a turn, plus the junior officers. That's important because as you take losses and move down in command dice, you don't want to get stuck rolling no activations at all. At least if I can get those senior officers activated, I can get shock off, I can activate multiple units. That's the choice based on where it comes in. Mortar team, senior officer.